everyone. Welcome to Young and Wifed Up. This is Gabby.
And this is Marcella.
Thank you for joining us today for another episode.
So before we get into our mini-sode topic today, be sure to check out our Patreon if you're interested in supporting us financially with a monthly subscription. We have 3 different tiers to choose from with different perks and benefits to each one. There's bonus episodes, there's exclusive merch, there are video chats, there's recommendation links, printables, just a bunch of exclusive content for you guys on there. And as well as if you sign up for one of those tiers today, you also get the backlog from the past season and a half, too.
Yeah. We've done a season and a half, so we're about to wrap up the second season that we've had on Patreon.
Yeah. So all the Patreon content, you'll have all of that stuff that we have previously uploaded since starting our Patreon account. And that is a really great way to support us practically with the finances, to keep our lights on and keep everything going and running with the podcast. Because obviously we do a lot of this, and well, not a lot of it. All of it is in-house, so we don't outsource anything. Everything is done between mostly Gabby and Ryan, and some of the stuff is for me.
Hey, we still appreciate it because it wouldn't be Young and Wifed Up without you.
Yeah. I do put out Patreon exclusive content as far as like the bonus
this month
episodes
you're doing both of them, so
yeah. So you'll see that stuff from me. As far as like the regular production stuff, it is mostly Gabby and Ryan. They don't pocket anything from it. They don't make really any money. We don't make any money really off of this. So this is a really great way to support us. If you want to do more than just the regular sharing or leaving reviews and ratings and things like that. So
awesome. Also, we talked about last week in our very chaotic What's in My Bag episode. If you made it through that episode, congratulations, you survived. We barely survived that episode. It was so insane. But while we were talking about that episode, we were plugging our YouTube channel. A very small minority of our audience is from YouTube. So if you didn't know, we do video and record visually all of our podcast episodes from this season back to season 3. So if you'd like to watch us talk and make a fool of ourselves, we are on YouTube, Young and Wifed Up. I'll make sure to add the link for that so that you can watch any of the episodes that you've listened to. So if you prefer to do that, that's a great way to do it. And you can subscribe and get notified by hitting the notification bell anytime we upload an episode. So today we're going to be talking about less stress traveling. And this is the second episode that we've done regarding vacations or traveling in general. The first episode we did was season 1, episode 15. So it's way far back in our episode log. And I actually, because I had forgotten what we talked about in the episode, I listened to it a couple weeks ago when I was making the outline for this one. And I just was introduced to a lot of the things that we've been implementing in our families, and how to vacation on a budget. So that's the title of that episode. And we specifically talk about how you can make and stick to a budget, not break the bank, and still get the most out of a vacation. We also talk about, Marcella specifically talks about in the episode about budgeting your energy. And so that's a really good companion episode. Before you listen to this one or after you listen to this one, head over to season 1, episode 15. That one gets really practical on the financial side of being able to travel, especially with little ones. And today we're going to talk more about how we can make traveling less stressful for us and our families by planning and organizing and being more flexible while we're actually on our vacation. So I'm going to hand it over to Marcella, who's going to give us some practical tips first on how to travel with little ones.
okay, so To be honest with you, I don't have a lot of experience traveling with children. I have a little bit, but you'll probably be talking more this episode, and maybe later on we'll do another one after we've done a little bit more traveling with the kids and stuff, because we haven't done a whole lot so far. But from what little experience we have had, um, planning around naps and meal times is obviously ideal to kind of keep stress levels low, especially when you're pulling your kids out of their normal daily routine. Um, and I will say, when you have young children and you're wanting to vacation with them, it's not going to be a vacation. Most of the time, from what I've found, traveling with young children is way more exhausting than just staying at home and
Mhm.
sticking to like your daily routine, because kids generally do a lot better with more of a daily regimen, and it's predictable, and so they kind of um what's the word I'm looking for? They kind of regulate themselves based off of like knowing what's going to come
Yeah.
like at certain points in the day. And so when you take them out of that sort of situation, it can maybe lead to some more emotional distress, and things like that. And also just trying to pack everything and prepare everything, all of the, oh, what if this happens and we need this for an emergency situation or whatever. Um, yeah, it can definitely be exhausting. So mentally prepare yourself that it probably isn't going to be very restful and relaxing for you, like vacations would be without children, or how you remember them to be before you had kids.
Yeah.
So if you can kind of like mentally prepare yourself in that way, I think that'll help kind of settle expectations before you guys leave. And I personally have like master packing lists that I use anytime we go anywhere, and it doesn't really change a whole lot. The only thing I think that probably would require me to change out the items on the list is if like if we have a newborn and then they require a little bit more
Mhm.
equipment,
Yeah.
like more clothing, more burp cloths, more, if you're bottle feeding at all, like getting all that stuff together, that's a little bit different than just having like toddlers who are a little bit more self-sustaining
Yeah.
to an extent. But the master lists do help. For some reason, I don't like making new travel lists and packing lists every single time we go on a trip. Like I would rather just have one single list that I just kind of go off of every single time we're gonna leave. And I think you're probably gonna talk about some
Yeah.
of that too. Um, Obviously pack a lot of snacks. Um, and if you can, try to save the screen time as a last resort, um, because you don't want to necessarily depend on that too much. There's so many like ways that you can avoid it. There's like audiobooks that they can do, listening to music, like putting together a playlist of all of their like favorite little kid songs. I'm trying to think. And then
I can
obvious
make a recommendation. Focus on the
yeah.
Families Audio Theater has endless material.
Mm,
And there's different age groups that some of them are geared towards, but a lot of them they try to stay like in the elementary and younger age
mhm.
range. And their catalog is enormous, and they
Yeah,
have teach good values, and it's kind of like a more acted out audiobook essentially. But
Mhm.
I remember listening to those a lot as a kid, and I know Shannon puts that on for her kids when they're in the car
Yeah,
for a
like
period of time.
Adventures,
Mhm.
yeah, like Adventures
Adventures
of
in Odyssey. And
Mhm.
they also have the Chronicles of Narnia on for their audio theater. There's tons of stuff
A bunch
that's
of
a
stuff.
lot of it is free or on Apple or Spotify, and
Yeah,
some you have to purchase, but I think that's even a great investment if you're gonna be in a car for a really long time for a trip and you don't want to rely on screens, but you also like
yeah,
need some sanity and quiet in the car.
yeah, yeah. So that I mean, obviously all of that can be helpful if you're doing like a road trip situation. You're gonna be in the car for a long time. Obviously with little ones, if you are gonna be road tripping, like having to get out every couple of hours, taking your kids out of their car seats and stuff to let their bodies reset is really important just because their bones are not as strong as ours are as adults, and obviously they're strapped in a lot differently in the car seat. So make sure you're taking into account that you are probably going to be making a lot more stops just to let them stretch out their limbs and their little spines and everything to make sure that their little bodies are getting a break from being in their car seats. um as far as like plane travel goes, um red eyes, I don't know. I hear conflicting information. So when we flew out from California to Tennessee, we did a night flight. We did an evening flight, and I think it was kind of around their bedtime. Seth did not sleep at all, but he's also just like very
High
hyper
energy.
aware. Yeah, I'm just like he gets distracted like very easily by all the cool stuff going on. And of course, like he's in a plane. Like, how can a 3-year-old sleep when they're in a plane? Like they can't, of course not. Um, I was able to get Eli sleep eventually, but it was a little rough. So I think that might have to be a trial and error thing. 'Cause I've heard and read some parents say their kids do better on like red eye flights when they're supposed to be asleep because they're more likely to knock out. And then others are like, oh, well, mine like fight their naps or they fight their bedtime when we're on the plane. And so it ends up just backfiring and then they're overtired and they don't end up falling asleep. So I don't know. I'm not going to give a hard a hard and fast answer on that one because I think you kind of have to go off of what you think would be best for your kids' temperaments and things like that. Um, oh, I'm sure there's a million other scenarios and contexts with traveling with little ones, but again, I just don't have a ton of experience with traveling with children at this point. That's really all I can think of.
Okay, if anything comes up while I'm talking about the other
Yeah,
stuff, you can totally plug it in.
yeah.
So as far as like ways to make our traveling for any reason, because traveling isn't always just like a getaway or a vacation. Sometimes like it's for a sad reason, like a funeral, or if it's for a joyful reason, like you're going to a family member's wedding, stuff like that. It's not always like we're going to the beach for a week and
Mhm.
just sometimes it's a weekend trip, sometimes it's a really quick turnaround. But the best way to that I've seen from my experience and also just watch observing other people is that the way to have less stress when you're traveling is planning for various outcomes in your traveling. So that includes like one thing I didn't plug in here that I think is actually relevant to our current day and age is that airports are and airlines are extremely understaffed right now. Like there's strikes happening, there's walkouts happening, there's all kinds of things happening in the airline companies where ends up being understaffed. So there are so many instances where flights are incredibly delayed. So one thing that I've been hearing like over and over again is if you have like a pressing appointment, like a wedding or a funeral or a family event that you're trying to go to that you have to fly to, try to plan like more than a day or two to fly out. That way, if the
Mhm.
worst happens and you're so delayed that it's like not even until the next day that you have prepared for the worst case scenario and you can still attend the
Mhm.
event. Some things are out of our hands. And again, we've talked about the resilience episode 2 episodes ago. The things that are out of our hands, we have to learn to be flexible and deal with them. But there's also ways that we can prepare better and be more responsible so that when we're preparing for traveling and then when we return home from traveling for any reason, our families are under less stress. Because the reason I didn't call this stressless traveling is because all traveling, even if it's for a good, happy reason, is going to induce a form of stress. Like Marcella
Mhm.
talked about, traveling with children is just stressful. It just is. Like,
Mhm.
it's just stressful, period. Or, traveling, even if it's just Ryan and I, we find ourselves in stressful situations every time we travel, whether it be we're stuck in traffic for hours and hours,
Mhm.
or something goes wrong with the flight, or something there's always going to be something. So, the things that are out of our hands, we need to give to the Lord and be flexible, but then proper preparation can help minimize the stress that comes. So, my first tip is if you can, and you know that you're traveling ahead of time, plan to do a home blessing before the trip, even if it's just a weekend trip, like a quick 2-day turnaround trip. If you do a quick home blessing, and if you don't know what a home blessing is, head to our Fly Lady episode. I talk all about the Fly Lady cleaning method and home management method. And a home blessing is essentially one big swoop around your house in 1 hour. And it doesn't change whether your house is really small or really big. I've managed to keep my home blessing as my house has now gotten bigger than it was before. Um, but you're not doing like a scrub, a deep clean. It's just
Mhm.
you're vacuuming and you're setting the timer and you're done when the timer's like over and you're not doing it anymore. You do the same thing for a quick mop, a toilet scrub, wiping and dusting surfaces. I take out all the trash in the trash cans so that we don't like accumulate any bugs over a weekend or over a longer period of time. And there's one thing I always do too that I'm it's slipping my mind. Oh, I make sure to have like clean towels like all set in the bathroom. That way, when I return from my trip, all I have to worry about is unpacking. And if you have children, that can so much more lessen the overwhelm because all you have to worry about is the stuff that you took with you, right? Your house isn't in shambles when you got there, when you
Mhm.
get back home after a trip. And the reason I say, even if it's only for a weekend, is because sometimes I'll tell myself, like, okay, we're only going for 3 days. It's not a big deal if I come home. But just like the exhaustion from driving alone, and
Yeah.
then I come home and there's dishes in my sink, I'm like, like,
Yeah.
why did I not take care of this before? And then I'm stressing out and I can't actually relax like after a long drive or a flight
Mhm.
because I didn't properly plan when I could have taken care of that when I had good energy and I was like getting things done and getting prepared for the trip and then come home and you know what? I can live out of my suitcase for a day. But like
Mhm.
coming home and seeing an overwhelming sight in your house, that is like causes more stress. So that's one of my
Mhm.
biggest tips. Doing a home blessing or just a quick swish and swipe throughout your house. It doesn't have to be crazy. It's not a deep clean. It's just a part of your travel preparation. Um, Marcella talked about lists, and I really like her idea about having a master list. Is that that's something that I'd really like to implement. Um, but when you're making this master list, there's two types of lists that I think can help lessen your stress. There's a to-do list, the things you have to do to prepare for your trip, and a to-pack list, things that you actually have to bring. And I started doing a to-do list for traveling I think like 3 or 4 trips ago because I would lay down like to go to bed knowing I had to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever.
Oh
And I
man,
would
yeah.
be ruminating, oh, remember to
Yeah.
do this, remember to do that before you leave. And what if you forget to do this? And I'm like, I had my packing list and I wasn't stressed about packing, but I'm stressed out about forgetting to turn off my ceiling fan or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those little things that pile up in your brain. So no matter how tiny and small and trivial it may be, those little things that would keep me up at night that would not allow me to get adequate rest before traveling, I now just chuck it in my to-do list for traveling. This is not like my normal to-do list where I'm doing house duties. This is like putting gas in your car, charging your phone and your iPad or your Kindle, things that you need for
Mhm.
traveling. Um, Getting your plant or pet sitter if you have pets or if you have plants that you're going to be gone for like more than a few days and you're worried about them. I have to get a plant sitter every time now that we have kind of like a lot more plants to deal with outside. I also put, turning off certain devices or lights or air conditioner in the house, stuff like that, having a schedule for the air conditioner, making sure if you have security systems in your house, like doorbells and stuff, that they're working great so that you're not worried about that while you're on your trip. And then obviously the fun stuff, which is, making the reservations for your hotel or your Airbnb or confirming the plans with the people that you're staying with just to confirm, hey, this is the time we're coming, are you still good? Because if something happens, you need to be prepared to make another arrangement. Also, confirming plans with people that you're planning on visiting. So, if you said in a passing way, like, oh, like, next time you come, we should get coffee. But then, like, you get there and then everybody's like, oh man, we missed our opportunity. If you plan ahead of time, just check in with that person, like, hey, this is the time that I'm available. If you'd like to, like, try to, meet up and see each other, this is when I'm available. And you can confirm those plans before you get on the trip. That way, when you're on the trip, it's already set in stone. You've made your
Mhm.
plans and you're not stressing out about trying to contact people while you're traveling. And then, so that's like kind of my idea for a to do list. Now, you can insert your own special needs in there. Like, do I have to make sure all the kids are showered and ready to go? Do I have to make sure that the dog is and any animals are fed and they have water ready and that whoever's taking care of them and popping in during the week has the right information? All that stuff you would insert into your to do list. For the to pack list, one thing that I've learned the hard way is to never assume you'll remember everything you need. Like,
Yeah.
I am so detailed with my packing list now that it's like things that literally live on my face, like my glasses, I literally put in it. Um so one thing that helps me organize my list, and I'd like to hear how Marcella does hers, is to organize it in categories so that you can better remember, like, as you're making your list. So if you make a master list like Marcella is saying she does, which I'd really like to do now that she said that, um I having categories can help you. So if you're like, oh man, like I can't remember like every tiny little piece of clothing, like if you just put outfits for the day, and then under that, you can start writing the subcategories of like, how many shirts do I need? How many pants do I need? How many pairs of socks do I need? Hygiene, and you have all of your hygiene things, first aid, vitamins. That's all one category. The kids stuff, the baby stuff, everything is in its own categories. That's what helps me the most to better
Mhm.
get my thoughts together. Marcella, how do you do yours?
It's a little bit similar to that. Like I do have the categories, um, just like basic things that not only I would need, but also I'll send the list over to my husband as well and like text it over to him and be like, just run through this just in case you might forget something. And
Yeah.
it sometimes, like you were saying, it's the things that we use all the time are the things for some reason that we end up forgetting. So
Yes.
I put things like my wallet and
Mhm.
my phone charger and my keys and like all of
Yeah.
these things that are like, well, there's no way I'd forget that. Like, assume that you're going to forget and then you
Yeah.
probably plan to forget and then you probably won't if you have it on your list. What I do with the clothing, like outfit situation, is um I will, for the days that we're going to be gone and where we're going, I go to the weather to see what is the weather going to be like on this day during the day? What is it going to be like in the evening? So usually what I'll do is I'll have like, say we're going to be gone from Monday to Thursday for some reason. I'll have Monday, warm day, cool evening, Tuesday,
Mm,
hot day, and warm evening. That way, and then I will have check marks like, okay, do I have an outfit that's, it's going to be warm and maybe rainy? Because if you're, somewhere where it's really humid, you may have summer storms. So having to plan for those things too. Do I have pajamas that are going to keep me warm at night if it's going to be cold? So I kind of go through like based off of the weather, and then I'll do that with like every like with the kids and everything too, kind of planning their outfits. And that kind of helps me avoid overpacking as
yeah.
well if I'm more specific with which clothes I'm bringing, as opposed to I'm just gonna wear whatever I feel like wearing, and I'm just gonna bring 5 different options for one day. I know that works. That works for some people, but I just generally don't like to have that much clutter like in my luggage and things like that. But outside of the clothing situation, it's pretty much the same as what you were saying. I just kind of try to go through what is my daily routine. Like I
Yeah.
go through when I wake up, what do I use when I do my morning routine? What do I use for my shower routine for, I need all my face wash and my dental hygiene stuff. Um, do I want to bring a few books if there's any
Hmm.
downtime? Yeah, electronics, yeah, all of that. Yeah, the first aid, yeah. That pretty much is all the same. Just kind of organizing. You do the categories and everything underneath that. You kind of just have to be a lot more detailed and specific about what it's just all context, like whatever you use in your
Yeah.
daily routine and stuff is what should probably be going with you on your trip. So,
Yeah, I really like what you said about the weather. That's one thing that I've gotten in the habit too. I've gone on one trip where I thought I looked at the right weather. I remember because we were going to the Sequoias to go dry camping, and it was like there was like rivers and there was the whole thing. And the weather that I had looked up for the national park was cold. And so Ryan and I
mhm,
both packed for cold weather. When we got to the specific location of the national park, it was so hot and all we had was like sweats and jeans. And I was so miserable the whole time. And I was like, if I just had the foresight to consider like the literal location, like the tiny little city that we were
yeah,
at, and so I'm always now super specific with my weather app, not just like, oh, like, this part. Like, no, I want to know the tiniest little part that I can find where I'm going to be actually at the whole time. Or if you're going
mhm,
to be traveling different places in one trip,
yeah,
to look up the weather for each day that you're going to go there because that really matters because you don't want to be unprepared and have improper clothing, especially if you have little kids. Like I could get through it. I was miserable, but it was like whatever. But like a little kid not having proper clothing for the weather, like that's like way more of like a detrimental situation.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so my next tip is to do a grocery trip before your trip. So a trip before your trip. Obviously for travel snacks, duh, because if you are getting travel snacks like as you're on your trip, like stopping, like, okay, first of all, if you're flying airport snacks, are you kidding me? They're so expensive. They're ridiculous. So if they're not liquid, you can put them um in your carry-on, in your backpack and stuff, your personal item.
Mhm,
No liquids though. So it has to be all dry snacks. And then you can just get whatever liquids like at the airport. But for driving situations, I found that it's so much easier for me to go and get stuff that we like at the grocery store. Not stuff that like while we're there, we're like, man, I didn't pack any chips and now we really want chips. We're like 3 hours into this trip and that's all I
Yeah,
want.
yeah, yeah.
Or I want a fun little drink. You're like, "Oh, I'm gonna have water," and I'm bringing my water bottle, but then you're like, "Oh, let's just stop at the gas station and get a Coke." So if I now I have the foresight, like I buy the fun drinks and the fun snacks and the healthier versions of them and cheaper, right? Because when you're on your road and you're in the middle of nowhere for some reason, they're gonna extort you, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
You'll
yeah.
go to those places and it's way more
And
expensive and
you'll
you
pay.
end up. Yeah, yeah. It's
Yeah.
so having a little cooler or a little bag with your snacks is always ideal, but not just for that. The grocery trip is not just for that. It's a good thing to practice, but that's not the thing that I wanted to talk about specifically. My friend Jasenia had a really good idea, so I'm going to give her all the credit. And I did it this last trip, is to do a trip specifically to get non-perishable or frozen foods for the day or the couple days after you return while you're recovering from the trip. Then all you need to do when you get home after an exhausting trip is just a quick little trip for produce, dairy, stuff that is perishable. So if you have your freezer stocked for at least like the couple days after you return or your pantry stocked, then you're not scrambling or too tired that where you end up eating out more when you first get back because you're just so tired and the
Mhm.
kids are hungry and you don't have anything that you can make really quick. Having that stuff stocked and ready is a great idea. This is what we did this last trip when we went to Tahoe. We did a quick little trip. I had a few things for the fridge. That way, Sunday and this morning, we weren't like, we have no food and now we have to figure
Yeah.
out like eat out somewhere. So that was a great tip. So I'm going to pass it on to you guys. It will make it a way less likely for you to eat out when you return home from, due to exhaustion. And also having foods that you like that, even something that your husband can prepare really quick if you got to deal with the kids and you're tired and something really easy, like not a 3-course meal, not like you pulling out the
Mhm.
stops and making a sourdough loaf, like the bare minimum possible meals for when you get home from a trip. And then my last couple tips, practical tips are if you're driving, take a look at your route to plan possible restroom, gas, or food stops. Don't don't rely on yourself to figure it out on your way. We've been in many circumstances where there was not a bathroom for 2 hours and we did not plan well because we didn't see it ahead of time, and then you're miserable, and then you have to do a side of the road situation, and nobody likes to do that. Um, Same thing for food and for gas. You never want to be in a situation where you're running out of gas and you call AAA or something to come bail you out.
Yeah.
And then lastly, pray before you travel. Pray for good attitudes. Pray for no bickering. Pray that God would keep you safe. That there would be no traffic. All those things. Sometimes it just gets us in a really good mindset. We're giving the trip to the Lord. If stressful things come, we're practicing resilience, we're being flexible as these things come, but praying before you travel can really like set the tone for the whole family and whatever, if you're in the car, you're about to get on the plane. And I always tell my family members and our best friends where we're going. Like, I always send out
Mhm.
a text like, "Hey, we're gonna be at this place at this time. This is the day we're arriving. That's the time that we're leaving." Because if there's any emergency for any reason, people can contact us or we can contact them. They know where we were at. So I always send a text to, yeah, my whole family in a whole group chat. I send it to everybody, even they're like, "Okay, you guys are adults." It's not because I want them to keep tabs on me. It's for safety reasons, and they do the same for us. Like my parents will always send us a text and let us know this is where we're at. This is the place we're
Mhm.
staying. And these are the days we're staying. And I
It's
also
just
send
looking
it.
out for each other.
Yeah. And then I always let the people like our two friends that live in town with us. Um, I always let those families know where we're going to. That way they know. One of them keeps an eye on our house and our plants for us. So that's really nice. But yeah, letting people know where you're going, especially as a woman, and if you're traveling by yourself or with small children,
Mhm.
it's just the best thing to do. And I know some people don't like their phones tracking them, but I feel a lot safer when I know my location is on while I'm on while I'm traveling, even if I'm traveling with Ryan, if for some reason we get separated for any reason and I'm in a place where I'm not comfortable and I don't know people, I know what's on my phone. Also, one last little thing and we'll wrap up. On my phone, a lot of phones have this ability now, but I have a Galaxy, so I don't know how you would do on an Android. If you go to your settings in your lock screen, there's a little place where you can put a note on your phone. I always have my husband's name and his phone number on my
Mhm.
phone. One, if my phone gets lost while we're traveling, and that happens to so many people. Like, as soon as somebody unlocks my phone and turns it on, they'll see his name on the bottom with his phone number and they can contact him to get my phone back to me. But if there's emergency, say something terrible happens and people don't know how to get a hold of me, what if I don't have my identification on me or something? You just never know. We should prepare for these things. It is safer to have some sort of, like, if you have your device on you all the time, it makes me feel safer and better when I know that there's somebody's phone number is on my home screen. Somebody doesn't have to unlock my phone in order to see that. So that's
Yeah.
one of my tips. Do you have anything else, Marcella, before we wrap up?
Um, no, but I have the same thing on my phone. I have Jed's phone number on my lock screen as a
Yeah,
note. Um, so that
highly recommend
people
doing
can
that.
just call.
That's
Yeah.
even just good, like, for your day to day.
Mhm.
Like,
No,
your day to day.
I have an option all the time.
Yeah,
It's
same.
always on my phone. Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope we gave you some good tips. Let us know if there's something we missed. Let us know your guys' traveling tips for having less stress when you're traveling, especially if you have tips with littles. Because again, Marcella said she doesn't have a ton of experience in this area, but if there's somebody out there that's listening that has lots of great tips, throw them in the comments on our Facebook group or on our Patreon. Let us know, and we can share that in a future episode. Thank you guys for joining us today. We'll talk to you guys next week for our season finale.
Bye.